Hello everybody, welcome to Flood Zone Ahead. Today we're going to be talking about how to find out your FEMA flood zone designation. And to find out your FEMA flood zone designation, you're going to want to go to a website called the FEMA Flood Map Service Center. And once you get to the website, you should see something that looks a little bit like this, and it'll give you an option to put your address or coordinates in. And after you type your address or coordinates in, you're going to get what they call a flood insurance rate map. And these are the maps that FEMA makes to designate flood risks. So there's three major categories. You're going to have high risk shown in this blue or red striped shaded area. You're going to have moderate risk shown in this orange brownish type area. So that's moderate risk. And then as you look outside here in these areas that are unshaded, just kind of looks like plain satellite imagery, that's going to be what they call a minimal or a lower risk flood zone. So these maps are what people are going to be using to identify the risk. If you want to get a better copy or save the map to your computer, you press that dynamic map button. Now, the important thing to keep in mind when you're looking at these flood insurance rate maps is that FEMA is not mapping these areas on a property by property basis. They're usually doing an entire city or an entire county in a single map project. So it's not designed to say that this house is in, this house is out. It's more of a general guideline for people to follow, but it's not the end all be all when we're talking about flood zone determinations. With that being said, mortgage companies, insurance companies, real estate agents are all going to be using these flood insurance rate maps to make decisions. So decisions would include whether flood insurance can be required on your property or not. If you carry a federally backed mortgage or loan and your lender believes that you're in one of these high risk flood designations, they do have the right to require flood insurance for you. However, we do have a process called a letter of map change application. The letter of map change is essentially a way you can have somebody take a closer look at that property, and essentially would be submitting an application to FEMA just to have them review your structure or your lot or whatever you're trying to have determined for flood zoning, because like I said, these FEMA maps are not designed to say individual properties are 100% in, 100% out, or anything like that. And the reason they have this letter of map change process is because there are instances where somebody's property might not be showing directly in a high risk flood zone, but if a bank or mortgage company looks at those maps, 9 times out of 10, they're not really going to split hairs. They're just going to say, yes, you're going to have that higher risk designation, which would then require flood insurance. So that's why they have a letter of map change application, so that people can basically dispute whatever a third party might be saying about that map, or to dispute the map itself, because the FEMA flood insurance rate map can't really take into account individual property elevations. So there are times where people might be shown in a high risk zone, but the elevations of their property actually show that at a high enough level that they wouldn't be required to carry that flood insurance or be considered in that high risk designation. So the letter of map change can also be used just as a waiver to show the actual conditions of a single property that the map just can't reflect. So if you guys are interested in learning more about flood zones, flood risk, flood insurance requirements, all those things, please consider giving my channel a like and subscribe. Flood Zone Ahead here, we're going to be talking about a lot of these emerging issues that aren't really being talked about in a lot of circles throughout the country. So it's a rapidly evolving field, and as I'm sure a lot of you have noticed, we're starting to see, more intense hurricanes, more intense rain events. So it's definitely something you want to keep in mind, whether you currently own a property, whether you're going to be making a purchase of a property or taking out some type of loan on a property. You always want to know what these FEMA designations are going to be there, just because it can have major implications down the road if you do decide to make a purchase on a property that may or may not be in one of these high risk designations. So definitely like and subscribe to learn more. And one last thing I do want to say is that I am a certified floodplain manager through the Association of State Floodplain Managers. So everything I'm talking about here is for educational and entertainment purposes solely. So before making any decisions, or before, purchasing any properties or making any of those types of decisions based off flood zone or flood insurance requirements, I always recommend you contact your insurance agent, your, real estate agent, your local floodplain manager, who's typically going to be in the building or zoning or planning department, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page with the flood risk for that area. And thank you guys for watching, and stay dry.